Okay, Christie, we're doing it. It's rather late on Monday, but we're holding to our commitment and we're recording the podcast. And barring any disastrous technology challenges, I will edit this tonight before midnight and get it posted. So, congratulations on our second podcast of 2025. So, we've had both busy days. And we talked about what we wanted to talk about today a little bit. And I think we're going to talk about money.
Seemed like it was a topic that, people seemed interested in
Yeah.
from our last conversation, just talking about if we help our future self, then we're not self-sabotaging. So then we talked about money and savings and things like that. And it kind of drew some attention. So we figured, why not answer some questions for people?
Yeah. I think, it's probably not something we would be talking about a lot on this, but who knows? We're just getting started. Maybe that's all we're going to talk about. But it did seem to strike a chord with several people that listened. And thank you for everybody that listened. A lot of positive feedback. Feel free to reach out to us directly if you know us, or put comments on any platform that you're watching. We love the feedback. I think for me, that's really motivating to hear people tell us what they liked, and feel free to tell us what you didn't like either, because that's good stuff, good feedback. But yeah, to your point, I think some people said that was something that they were interested in, and anybody that knows me knows I like talking about it. So we thought, this is not going to be a boring, well, it might be boring, I don't know, but it's not going to be like a money podcast where we're going to get real technical. I think it's more about our story, right? That's probably where we want to go with this.
I think so. And I think you do have another channel where you talk about money matters.
I'm working on it. So okay. I probably will put a link, depending what platform you are. I'll try to figure out a way to put a link for people to see it. But I have been working on building a new YouTube channel that's very creatively called Money Talk with Dan. But the intent of that will be to just be kind of financial literacy and education. I guess that's what it's going to be. It's going to be a lot more education focused, whereas this channel is, more so personal, us talking our perspectives and philosophical, if you will. Mm-hmm. So, but yeah, I'll put a link to that. But I think what we wanted to talk about a little bit today is why we both feel this is really more important than I think a lot of people give credit to be. I think a lot of people, obviously money is important to everybody. You need it to survive. But I'm just always amazed, because we went through this early on in our marriage, how easy it is to let money control you instead of you controlling money.
Yeah.
It's an interesting to talk about. So with that said, maybe we could just kind of jump into our story a little bit. So we've been married now for 175 years. Isn't that true?
It feels like it some days, doesn't it, Dan?
Well, that's not what I want to hear from my wife.
No, you could say that truthfully.
No, it's true. But we've been married over 25 years now.
Feeling a little silly. Forgive me.
That's okay. That'll probably make this one very interesting, and it needs a little flair.
What is it? 25 years as of July.
As of this past July, yeah. Mm-hmm. So we're working on 26 years here. So 25 and a half years. And I'm 48. I think I mentioned that in the last podcast. I don't know everything, but I feel like I've learned through the school of hard knocks. Mm-hmm. And one of the things, I was just talking to somebody today about this. A lot of people feel really guilty about their lack of financial awareness and knowledge. And I always tell people when I talk to them about this, it's and I'm not one to like give wipe away personal accountability in anything. I'm big on personal accountability, but when it comes to financial literacy, I feel like our education system is just culpable in this problem in our country. Like, I went to public school, Christie went to private school, and I think it's true that both of us probably came out of our regular grade school with next to zero financial literacy. And I went to university, Christie went to college. We came away with next to nothing.
Well, I think, so I agree with you. I think also we just had no clue about when we wanted something.
Yeah.
We were at this young age, we're getting credit card applications in the
Oh God.
mail,
Yeah.
remember? And
Yes.
then we're just like, oh, why not? Because we were just so immature.
Yeah.
And we were just like, having no idea what it means to wait for what you want.
Delayed gratification.
That's what I was talking about. We
Yeah.
just didn't have that. I was thinking about when we were dating, I was thinking, okay, we both came into our marriage with debt. But I was
Yes.
thinking, man, he wined and dined me for over 2 years, but minus the wine.
It was a good
And
investment.
wow. Oh, thank you. You're going to make me blush. But you were taking me to Broadway shows, to New York City. It was just like, and back then, 25 years ago, that was really, it is something today, but that was really something back then. Like,
Yeah.
I'd never done that before.
It was definitely above either of our economic status to do the things that we were doing.
We were eating in the DuPont Green. Is it the Green Room?
It's the really expensive part
Whoa.
in Wilmington, Delaware.
Yeah. I think it was called the Green Room. It was like, what were we doing?
I remember being uncomfortable eating there.
Oh, yes. And I was very uncomfortable with you eating there. There was this apple cobbler.
Yes.
And it was so crusty. Like, like.
Oh, I remember.
You know what I'm talking about? It's like this extra breading on top, but I can't think of the name of it.
It was caramelized sugar on top of this apple crisp.
It was like breaded and
yeah.
Apple crisp. Yes. It was just so crunchy and you were having a hard time eating it. So you were like kind of.
I started jabbing it with my fork.
I was just like, oh no, this is not the place to do that. I was just like, oh, maybe just be a little more gentle on that.
She didn't realize what she's getting into.
We have
this
grown.
Poor immigrant kid.
We have grown so much though. But I was just thinking about that. Like money was just, we didn't think twice about it. I mean, we both had jobs.
Yeah.
We worked for money.
Well, at that point, I was working part-time jobs while going to college.
I started working full-time at 17.
Yeah.
So I had money, but I definitely was using my credit card.
Yep.
And I don't think I knew otherwise. Like, that's not a good idea. I don't think I knew that.
We didn't have anybody, and both of our parents came from very simple upbringings. Mine in Eastern Europe, yours in Northeastern Kentucky. And so, it's always pretty interesting when we explore our both our respective families. They came from, I would say, equal economic status, but just very different, parts of the world. But, nobody told us, be careful of credit card debt when you're a teenager, or when you're in your 20s even. And I remember, I don't know if I want to figure out what the exact age, but it definitely was before I was 20. I'm going to guess 17 or 18 years. It couldn't be 17. It had to be like 18 or 19 years old. I went to a Giants game with my cousin and my brother and a friend or so. And I remember walking into the stadium, and MBNA, which is now Bank of America, had a table set up with a credit card, like they used to do. I don't know if they do. I see that occasionally in airports, but you don't see this as much. Maybe we just don't go to places like this anymore. But we walked up, and it was some kind of gift they would give you if you signed up for a credit card. As a matter of fact, I know what it was. It was just a silly little Giants helmet, that was signed by some coach. Yeah. And I gave it to my son.
Yeah.
And all you had to do is sign up, and it was like a credit card with your NFL team. And I was like, oh, I can get it. I didn't even think I was going to get it. I was like this kid that worked part-time jobs, zero credit. And I signed up, and to my amazement, a few weeks later, they sent me a credit card with, I don't know, $1,000 credit limit or whatever it was. And I was like, what in the world? And sure enough, I recall, now I had enough sense to at least at first pay it off. And so I would start using it for gas, going to college. And then I would, my dad's like, well, pay that card off. And I would pay it off. Well, then MBNA, Bank of America, now they were like, oh, we'll just keep raising your credit. And I want to say by the time we were dating, I had like $15,000 credit limit.
Wow.
It was like super, super high, which is insane to think about, that a bank would be predatory enough to hand this teenager This kind of unsecured line of credit, it was crazy.
Mm-hmm. So I want to go back just for a minute and say, I do not remember being taught that credit cards were bad. But if for some reason my mom or dad told me this and I didn't listen, I'm sorry.
Yeah.
So
Well,
I
I'm sure
that.
I'm sure I had some guidance as well from my parents. But, I can speak for my parents with fair enough authority, because I have talked to them about this many times. They didn't know either. For those of you that don't know that my story, which we can get into in a future episode, my parents immigrated. They were refugees. My mom was a refugee from what was at that time Yugoslavia, and they came in the late 60s, my dad early 70s. And so they were, I was born in 76. So they really didn't understand the system here. So
you went to kindergarten speaking Slovak.
English is my second language. Yeah. So, obviously that's a big gap between that and, early adulthood. But all that to say, I didn't get a lot, if any, financial literacy in my
life. Are you about to sneeze?
No.
I look like you're going to sneeze. I've forgotten to purchase your Zysol. Please forgive me.
I do have bad allergies. No, I'm going to be fine. I'll be fine. But going, so Christie said is absolutely right. So, I think both of us had a similar challenge, probably me worse. I think I probably brought, a little more debt than you did. I had student loans, which is another story. I don't know if we can get into it today, but, I think I was probably very careful with my credit cards, but when we started dating, the bliss of falling in love, it's a worthwhile warning to young people that may be listening to this by chance, to, that, whether it's falling in love or finding a passion, a hobby or something that consumes you, that's what did it for me. All my guardrails went out the door when we were dating. And as Christy alluded to, obviously I was trying to win this beautiful young lady over. So money was no object. I had $15,000 of credit limit. And by that point, probably multiple credit cards.
So just to be fair, I don't think I asked you for any of that stuff.
No, as a matter of fact,
hey,
Christy,
will you take me? I wasn't trying to take advantage of your kindness at all.
And I hope I didn't represent it that way. As a matter of fact, Christy has a reputation that dates back to that day where you would fight me for the bill. That her dad used to teach you that. But
yes,
nonetheless, whether it was you charging it or me charging it, I tried to be the gentleman and pay it. Either way, it ended up being our debt. And the point is, through our 2.5 years of dating, we had amassed a fair amount of credit card debt. And then, of course, getting married, all those expenses, our parents were not either one of them wealthy. So they didn't dump, large budgets. While we had a really nice wedding and your dad did pay for the reception, it was still,
and that was probably close to $20,000 too. That was a lot of money back then. And it was so fancy.
Yeah, it was very fancy, over the top, beautiful. A lot of people. We had 10,000 people on our wedding party. It was ridiculous.
It was a big wedding. It was beautiful. You don't regret any of that.
I probably would do it different if I did it over again. But
just cheaper. Just more frugal.
Cheaper. Elope. Yeah. No.
Don't say that. Parents will shut this off so fast, ban their kids.
Yeah. But, I think it probably continued in our early marriage years. We had a rough start, not in relationship wise to our marriage, but my job, we had a hard time putting roots down anywhere. So
we didn't even think twice about renting a house, a whole house furnished. Was it like $750 a month?
Which was a good deal, actually.
It was a good deal, but we struggled. For the first 6 months of our marriage. We moved into a place in Elkton, Maryland, which we really loved.
Beautiful
it was beautiful.
Home. Yeah.
But you were hardly there because you were driving like almost 3 hours away. So that was crazy. And then so you would just still stay with your parents, up by where you worked. And you would come home. I'd go stay with my parents. I'm like, because I don't want to stay in this big house by myself. And I was like,
just a lot of foolish.
Why are we doing this? Why are we married and just still living separate and paying for this house? It doesn't make any sense.
Well, cars, I was driving a fancy sports car, a lot of miles, just not making wise financial decisions. We were fiduciarily ignorant people, and we just lived.
Do you remember when we went to General Conference?
Yeah.
We had lived in that house for 6 months, and we had gone to General Conference, and we actually were together every day.
This is a general conference, is like, this big gathering. It's like a week-long general conference where we would travel and stay in a hotel and, attend this conference.
Yeah. And we literally took bread and peanut butter and jam, and we had that in the hotel room. But we were together. We were stuck together for a whole week, and we were like, hey, I really like you.
Yeah, this is kind of cool.
And you're like, I really like you too. Why aren't we doing this all the time? We're married, like we should be together. And so then we even, I think, made the call to the person that we were renting from and said, look,
can we break the lease?
This isn't going to work because we really love each other. We want to be together.
Yeah. And, it realized, it reminded us why we got married. We enjoyed our time together. It seems so, ridiculous to talk about, but we made the decision to let that house go. And that was probably around the time in my memory that, at least from my perspective, I started realizing that we were living an unsustainable path, financially speaking. And we had to make some serious changes if we were going to get ahead. And for, just for the record, for people that don't know, Christie was working at a very good job. I think at, DuPont Pharmaceutical at the time. She was making great money. I was an engineer, graduated from, so we were both doing well, relatively speaking, but we were just spending more than we were making. That's the bottom line. And at the time, it wasn't like we chose to spend more than we made. It was just, I feel like that's what happens when you don't pay attention to it. It's so easy to get caught up. A lot of people use the phrase keeping up with the Joneses, but it's not like you have a specific Joneses that you're trying to keep up with. It's just American culture. The advertising machine, it certainly has a part of the community you're part of, people you're surrounded with, but it's so easy to live up to a standard that is not sustainable in our country. And that's a huge problem that so many people, dare I say, the majority of Americans that I know of, they're stuck in that cycle.
I will say a little bit in our defense that, we didn't pay attention back then to all the money that was dumped into gas. Yeah. And all the driving
we
back
had no
and
budget.
forth.
There was no
budget.
There was
no budget.
No.
And so we just didn't think about, okay, you're going to have to get lunch. I'm going to have to get lunch. We just didn't.
Right.
We just didn't think that way back then.
I think the limit of our financial attention was, our checking account went negative again.
Yes.
And at the time, overdraft fees and credit cards hit the credit limit. And we're like, what are we going to do this month? That was the extent of how much we paid it. And it seems crazy, but that's how we lived. And, so now
I forgot about that stuff.
It's been so many years,
man.
But I've been talking to a lot of people. That's how people live. When we hear this, the statement, most Americans are living paycheck to paycheck. That's what that means. And it grieves me. It really does, because people that I love and I'm close to, I hear them talking like this. And if that's you, please don't feel judged by us talking about
shamed.
This. Don't feel shameful. There's so many people that have been through this. I feel super fortunate. I don't know if it's a result of my brain and engineer training, analytical, pragmatic mindset, or if this is truly God. I do believe it's the latter, and we'll get into that here in a second. But I don't think, especially if you're a Christian, it's not God's will for you to live that way. There's so much that can be said about that, and it's no way to live. That is no way to live. And for us, I feel like at that time when so we left that house.
Yeah.
And so Christie was working, her job was in Wilmington, Delaware. So that's the very northern part of Delaware. I was working in West Caldwell, New Jersey, which, if you guys don't know, if you look it up on a map, that is way northeastern New Jersey. That's like New York City metro area. So, quite the conundrum. So, we thought, well, let's find some place to live at least halfway between to make this a little more reasonable. So we ended up renting an apartment. We'll talk about that here in a second, but it was in Maple Shade, New Jersey, which is a little closer to Wilmington, but at least it was more of a manageable commute.
So just to note, we were attending church in Maryland.
Yeah, that was a big part of
And
it.
so that was
Correct.
probably why we kind of
That's
navigated a
true.
little closer to,
Yep.
like where I worked was
Right.
like 45 minutes still, 45-minute drive. For you, I think it was an hour and 20 to 30 minutes still.
Hour and a half. Yeah, solid hour and a half.
Yeah. So, but for us to get to our church, I think it was definitely a little more than an hour.
Yeah, you're absolutely right. That was a big part of the decision.
And we were so involved in our church back
We were.
then.
We were. But, that was the time I remember at least starting to be aware of the fact that we were living in an unsustainable way and we got to change. I don't know that I, whipped out a spreadsheet right away and started making a budget, but it was at least the time we started thinking about it. And we started making attempts to adjust our lifestyle. And this is a key point that this is lesson number one. We're 20 minutes into this podcast. And, I want to share this as a really powerful thing, because this is all very basic stuff, but it has the ability to literally change your life in a practical way in 2025. And if you're listening to this, again, I don't want you to feel judged, but just take our story for what it is and look, see if it's something that could be applied to you. But, the lesson number one is, make drastic adjustments in your lifestyle. Mm-hmm. I feel like we live in a place in the world in a time where that is possible for almost everybody. And for us, that meant living in a decent town. Maple Shade, it's not upscale. It's kind of a lower middle class town in South Central New Jersey. Mm-hmm. And we rented a 625 square foot, 1-bedroom apartment. Mm-hmm. Not the nicest place.
I remember the guy, our neighbors, he always parked his nice sports car, which Mitsubishi. Was actually like he put like a different. Remember how it wasn't like the name brand that?
Yeah, he kind of rebadged it.
What is it called? Rebadging?
Yeah, it was like Mitsubishi 3000 GT, and if you know those cars back in the, I guess, late 90s, early 2000s, there was the VR4, which is like a twin turbo V6, really nice car, and he had the base model, but he put turbo on it and all. It was annoying to me.
Well, but he would like park over the line, and he would be really ugly.
Yeah,
that's tough.
Oh, it was, that's typical apartment life, though. Yeah. Anybody who's living there, like, oh, you're preaching where I live here. This is what we deal with.
And you're like smelling the food from
the first floor.
Yeah. And so all of that stuff you just don't think about, but we did, and I'm not against living in an apartment. I would go and live in an apartment. Again, we've talked about that if we needed
not 625 square feet.
Yeah, we need a little bigger because now we've got kids. But but that was all like, whew,
it was a big adjustment.
Eye-opening.
It was a big adjustment.
And we talk about sometimes how to cut down on expenses. We would do like literally our meals were little tortilla chips. Yeah. Little tortilla chips with a can. I would open a can of refried beans and I would just put a little bit of refried beans on top of that little chip. And I put a little taco sauce and I would put it in shredded cheese and put it in a toaster oven. Mm. And then I'd pull it out, put a little sour cream on it for you. Not for me. I don't like sour cream. And then we would do like 10 of those chips. That was our dinner.
That was dinner.
Because we realized we had a problem.
Yeah.
And we had to cut expenses way down.
Yeah.
And we went without furniture in that apartment for a long time. Actually, your parents gave us the living room furniture.
Their basement flooded out.
Yeah, their flooded basement
and so
furniture.
They had cloth couches that had flooded out, and they had they were like recliners, so they had like metal linkages,
super rusted,
and it got flooded. Like, you want them? Or I think they're about to throw them away. And I was like, hey, we need furniture.
But, yeah, no, I don't regret any of this.
Absolutely.
And I'm so grateful for every bit of it. We were probably in that apartment for it had to be like 3 or 4 months before we could even afford a dining room table.
We still have that table.
We still have it. We paid around $600 for it.
It was a decent, nobody would consider it high quality today, but it was made out of real wood, and it was just a small, like I don't know, like a 4-foot round, 4-foot round. It's probably more considered like a breakfast nook table today, not really a dining, but for us, that was our dining room table. And it was the first piece of furniture we actually purchased. Yeah, everything else was hand-me-downs.
We still have it.
Yeah, we do.
We refinished it. It's sweet.
We got it. It's kind of sentimental. But, that's the first thing I want to share with everybody is no matter where you are, if you're struggling financially, I would say step number one, make the necessary adjustments. You can make adjustments.
Mm-hmm.
You know, uh, the car you drive, the house, the apartment, the food you eat, um, make those adjustments. And again, I said, I don't remember if that was, budgeting time. I will kind of share a little bit about that here shortly, but um, I think if you sit down and look at your expenses, and again, I don't want to get too technical in today's talk, but if you sit down and document everything, it'll be pretty easy to figure out what you're spending a lot of money on. And just know that you can do that. That's the first thing to acknowledge. You can
Just
make
awareness.
adjustments. Don't believe the lie that, well, this is my lifestyle and this is what it has to be. No, you can make adjustments, drastic adjustments, and be happy. And the important thing is, you just heard Christie and I talk about it. Hopefully you see the authenticity in our faces, in our voices, but we have very fond memories of those times.
Really do.
Life was good.
We would go to the drag strip.
Yeah.
And we went to the one with the dirt track.
Oh,
and we had taken some Subway subs.
Yeah. So for
we
fun,
were eating dirt.
We couldn't, obviously we're trying to make adjustments. So we're not paying to, do any kind of vacations or fancy anything, no more fancy. So we're like, well, what are we going to do? It's Friday night. And I was into racing and motorsports, and Christie at the time got into it with me, probably just to appease me. But
I remember loving it.
So I was like, hey, there's a dirt circle track nearby. Let's go check it out. So we went like to Subway, and we're sitting in it. I think it was a few bucks to get in to watch these races, and we're sitting in these bleachers. And little do we know, like these things are racing around this dirt track, and dirt's flying everywhere. We're trying to eat subs as our date night, and it's got dirt in it now. We're like,
it's like you're at the beach eating sand.
Oh,
and I was like, man, we needed to bring our swim goggles or something because
I think we left early that day.
It was getting like in our eyes. We have some very, very fond memories of those times.
I know I do.
And even the friendships that we had during those times.
Yeah.
And we just learned so much.
But, about that time, and again, I don't remember, exactly all the chronological order of the things, but I do think it's important. There's somebody that said this. I don't even remember what the context is, but, I think it's an absolute truth. You can't improve what you don't measure.
That's good.
And with your finances, for us, I would say that is critical, right? If you are living life without a budget, if you're in debt and you say you're trying to get out of debt and you don't have a spreadsheet where you're tracking that, then you're really not trying to get out of debt. Yeah. You're saying that, but you're not actually doing it. And I remember for us, this is way before Dave Ramsey. So we're talking, this is probably not 25 years ago now. This is probably 20 years ago. I don't know when Dave Ramsey started his program, but, for me, intuitively, I just understood, I came up with the snowball method in my own head that Dave Ramsey preaches. And I'm going to put this out there in the world. I'm not proud of this, but we had amassed $60,000-$70,000 of credit card debt.
It's true.
And
well, I think that was coupled with some student loans.
Yeah, so student loan.
I think that's combined.
Which, when I say student loan, it was student loan that was not used to pay for college. My dad paid for college. My mom and dad funded my college. I just got a student loan and decided to buy a fancy red sports car with it. So, so when I say student loans, it's not like I paid for my college with that. It was all just unsecured debt. But yeah, we had hit critical mass at probably $70,000, somewhere around there.
And this was almost 3 years into our. Okay, so the first 6 months we lived in Elkton, Maryland. Then we lived in this apartment that you're talking about in Maple Shade for 2 years. We did a 2-year lease. 2.5 years, something like that, yeah. And and so when you're saying about Christians not, trying, we should, as Christians, try to stay away from being in debt. It's one of the things that comes to mind, because after we lived there, we did actually live in Dover, Delaware then for a year.
Correct.
But we wanted to go to Sri Lanka. We wanted to do missions work. And so if you're living under that burden of paycheck to paycheck, which we know all about that, but it really limits your ability to pick up and go and do what you feel you need to do. We were delayed in going to Sri Lanka for a year or more?
Well, worse yet, we would have never been able to go. So, I think what Christie is saying is so important, because some people may be like, maybe, if you're a Christian or, believe in the Bible as a good book, whatever your belief system is, the Bible does teach for Christians to, not be in debt to man. And you may have read that or heard that or not, and think like, oh, well, it's another one of those Old Testament or not relevant portions that, everybody's in debt these days. Most of, I've never done the survey, never read the survey, but I would imagine a vast majority of Christians are in some kind of debt.
But it limits you from doing
well, this is the
you
point.
Feel like it delayed us for what, 1 to 2 years, maybe even 3 years. I don't know,
It was
because we were
close to
like,
3 years.
we can't rely on other people. We're not doing, like, I don't know if back then there was GoFundMe. If there was, I don't remember.
No.
We can't rely on other people to pay for our debt. Like, we can't raise money for this. We've got to work. We've got to do the hard work. And
we were
and
in the
did.
grind. We were handcuffed to debt. And, I've always said this, and I don't think this is being too dramatic, but, the level of debt that we were in, I equate that to modern day slavery. I mean, we were enslaved to the banks in that they basically, had us chained to our jobs, in that we had to make those payments.
Mm-hmm.
And
if you don't pay them on time, then you have extra money you have to come up with to pay for interest rates, all that stuff.
It gets deeper into debt. And, obviously, you can take that to the nth degree where, it can get serious. But for us, I think, the important thing is, everybody, I believe everybody has a purpose, especially if you're Christian. We all have gifts. And in our case, as newlyweds, very early in our marriage, we felt called to do missions work. And, it happened to be in a location that's on the other side of the planet, in a third world country, Sri Lanka. And, with this level of crippling debt, we could not see a way to accomplish that goal, because, what was Christie was alluding to is, if you don't know, if you've never been involved with missions, typically a missionary that's going for a long-term mission assignment, they will raise money from various sources. So in our case, we had a network of churches that we were able to partner with eventually when we did go. And, you have a budget of what it takes for you to live for the term that you're going to be overseas, and you help raise money to cover that expenses. Well, you can't in good faith go ask churches and givers and businesses saying, hey, not only do I need $20,000 to live for 6 months in this country, but I'm going to need another $40,000 to pay the payments on my debt while I'm gone, because I'm not going to be working. Nobody's going to do that. And so in a sense, we were unable to respond to what we felt distinctly called to do by God because of debt. And that was a really tough place.
I think that also added to just this whole, like, awareness and eye-opening experiences that probably help us to feel so passionate as we do today.
100%.
Because we don't want to be held back or limited if our purpose changes, or if we're supposed to go, and do something like that again. Who knows?
Yeah. And so that's a good segue to, to kind of fast forward through the rest of the story. So, we got aggressive and made all the changes, and we started selling everything. We started paying, I created a spreadsheet, burning down our debt, snowball method, as I mentioned, peanut butter sandwiches and, tortillas with refried beans, whatever it took. We were committed, because now we felt a spiritual calling and a purpose to getting debt free. And we didn't get 100% debt free, but we sold literally everything. I think all of our possessions fit on a little tiny utility trailer when we ultimately went.
We kept our car because we needed to have that when we got back because we went for 6 months.
But I recall that car payment. It was a little Nissan Sentra, 2001 Nissan Sentra. It was $140 a month. So we felt, actually, that's an interesting story, which we don't have to get into all the detail, but I had owned a car that was Christie's car. The Nissan was. I had an old Mustang, and the plan was to sell that Mustang for $2,500 is what I needed to pay that $140 payment and the insurance payment for that Nissan, so that we can have a car and get back. And that was the plan. It was a Mustang. It was going to be easy to sell. It was a demand car. Well, 2 weeks before we're supposed to leave, or 1 week, I believe, actually. It was very soon, less than a month before we're supposed to leave. We had our plane tickets, and I got into a car accident and totaled that car. Actually almost died. And, it was a faith testing story, and I could tell that story some other time. It all worked out. God turned it around.
We've got to have a talk about just Sri Lanka, like all that. So that'll be down the road then. But that'll be
if you're
one.
interested, and we will do a podcast on our missions experience. We have so many stories, including some supernatural things that happened to us, and ultimately how we landed in North Carolina is all related to that story. Yeah. But in terms of the finances, God took care of us, and we did get to the point where we finally made it to Sri Lanka, almost debt free. Mm-hmm. And we'll share this one part because it's a somewhat related tidbit. It's interesting how God makes you uncomfortable when he wants you to move. And this has been the case for me my whole life. And at that time, we don't have to get into detail here, but we were struggling in the place we were in our church and just life in general, some of the relationships. And I was working at a company, a really good job, at an aerospace company in Delaware, doing, I was a rocket scientist, if you will. I was working on some really cool stuff and enjoying the job, but frustrated about life. And I remember we lived in Dover, Delaware at the time, and it was a Sunday night. We laid in bed and we were just rehashing some of our frustrations about what was going on in our world. And I made this statement. I turned to Christie. I said, you know what? If I lost my job tomorrow, I said, I would pick up and go to Sri Lanka. And won't you know it? I called Christie by noon on that following Monday. And
it was in October.
Got laid off from my job.
Yeah. And at that same time, around 9:00, you called me Monday morning. That I was working a temp job then in Chadds Ford, Pennsylvania, also at a pharmaceutical company. My boss had called me in to say they wanted to hire me permanent. And but I also, shortly before that time when she called me in, I'd gotten your phone call saying you were laid off. And we also got an email from the missionary saying that morning, it's time for you guys to come.
Yep.
So when I went into her, I was like, I'm going to Sri Lanka. It was just like, this is happening. The reason why I remember it was in October is because we left December 10th, the day after my birthday.
Yeah. It'll happen very quick at that point.
And we had to raise, I think it was around $14,000.
Yeah. This is, 20 years ago money, but, from a personal finances perspective, we had been working pretty aggressively because we felt the call to go to Sri Lanka at least 2 years before. So we had been working, grinding, making changes, sacrificing. And, this is a good time to remind, why we motivated this podcast topic, because, Christie mentioned this. If you're not making sacrifices today, you're sabotaging your future. And
what was a question? I wasn't sure.
I'm turning it into a statement because of what we just said. Our life experience proved that. And, if we never made the sacrifices to get out of debt, not only we were sabotaging our future, think of all the people that we were able to impact in our time overseas and ultimately our lives. You can make it's not a stretch to think you're sabotaging the world.
That's so heavy.
And I'm looking at our audience right now, and I'm looking in the mirror at myself. What sacrifices are you not making today that is going to change the world for the worse? Because you're not willing to make a sacrifice today. And that's a tough pill to swallow, but it's not always the negative, because there's another part to our story. So I'm happy to say that once we made those changes, once we came back from Sri Lanka and ultimately landed in North Carolina, where we are today, we've been very fortunate. We've been very blessed financially. We've had great careers and we're able to make good money and we stayed debt free. And I think because we work so hard to get there, but I want to fast forward to more recent, not only, sacrifices for finances is not about just getting out of debt. So you can, get debt free and do the fist pump and say, now we're going to Disney World and we're going to go on a cruise every year because we've got all this extra money. And I remember when we paid off our last debt feeling like, because, I use the snowball method. And for those of you that don't know what it is, so let's say you have, 5 different accounts that you owe, you got to pay off. So the method is pick the smallest one and pay the rest of them, the remaining 4, send minimum payments just so you don't get behind, and take everything you have and combine it to the smallest one to pay it off as quickly and aggressively as possible. Once that's paid off, take that amount, add it to the minimum payment to the next smallest one, and then pay it down as aggressive as possible. Any raises you get, extra money, put it all in there, everything, and then pay that one off. And then it snowballs. It goes faster and faster. So it actually moves much faster than you realize. But I remember after we paid off the last one, which ended up being that MBNA card that I got way in Giant Stadium. I remember thinking at that point, I don't think it's a stretch. I want to say I was sending in like close to $2,000 a month to this credit card because I snowballed it. And I remember thinking when I was like, my spreadsheet showed like there's only like 5 or 6 payments left. I'm like, I can go buy a Corvette. We're going on vacation because we're going to have $2,000 a month available in our budget that we were not used to even having.
Yeah.
But the point is, making sacrifices is not only important to get yourself out of a bad situation, making sacrifices also maybe more important to get you in a good situation.
Not taking advantage of all the things you could do.
Opportunities.
But not taking advantage of some of those things is what I'm saying. So
Yeah.
like, it's not that it's a bad thing to go on this extravagant vacation.
You got to do it once in a while. 100%.
Yeah, for sure.
100%.
But you also want to be aware of not doing it too much. So I want to just tie this together with our last podcast. And that is that anytime we got a tax return, anytime you got a bonus, that's where that money was going toward.
100%.
And so, but that was back then. And still to this day, we just do it the same way, even though
it's our lifestyle.
We don't we're not struggling with debt right now. It still goes into savings.
Yeah. We live a lifestyle. And again, this is just us. This is our story. I don't want anybody to feel judged by this, but after you pay your essentials and assuming you're living a humble life, you should, again, going back to the first lesson, live way below your means. Do not get into a situation where your essentials, your bills, basically take up all of your income. That's a huge mistake. So it's not just to get out of debt, it's also to enable your future. And again, live under your means. All the extra, save it. And the main point, the kind of culmination of this is, if you save, it's not just to say I've got a lot of money in the bank. A lot of people, and I've had conversations with people who are borderline condescending to me, like, why do you need that much money saved up? And my point is, you have no idea what opportunity is right around the corner that you having money saved up, cash saved up, enables you to participate in that opportunity. And if you didn't, you're just going to look at that and say, well, that's those people that have a lot of money. No, it's for you. You just got to make sacrifices today to enable a greater tomorrow for you, for your kids. And again, this is not just a personal thing. It becomes generational. And how many people can you bless? How many people, by building a business, buying that business, whatever it may be, you can literally change the world if you're just willing to make sacrifices today.
I think of our last house.
Yeah.
Where, so when we first moved to North Carolina, our first house we felt like it was a little too expensive because we also lived in you call it a paired villa.
Yeah, we're in a little
We were a
duplex.
little duplex. And so we lived there for a year or 2 years.
It was probably a year. It wasn't long. Initially it was an apartment. I guess the whole time it was an apartment that, was provided to us as part of the ministry arrangement that we were in.
And then we moved into the house, but the house was also, we felt like it was too expensive.
Yeah, it was a stretch.
Yeah,
we thought
for
so
us.
anyway.
Yeah, we thought so. And then we ended up moving to another house that was a bit more, but it was a stretch again.
Sure.
And we lived there for what, 15 years?
Yeah, it was over 10 years. Time. Yeah.
And so I remember I was in Maryland and you were part of this, text messaging group.
So I was in a real estate investment group that sent out deals. And, it's because I was helping my father build a family real estate business where we were buying cheap homes, fixing them up and renting them out. So I was in this group that sent deals that I would normally, but we're talking like really cheap inner city homes, at the time. And again, this is a while ago. So we're talking like less than $50,000 homes. So that's typically what I was looking at. But then I got this text message that Christie's talking about.
Yeah. He sent it to me. I was sitting by my dad, I remember. And I said, what would it take for you to move to North Carolina? And he mentioned like some square footage of some homes and stuff like that. And I was like, opened up your text message and I was like, okay, we got that. Like we can do that for you, And so I said, Dan, he sent me this link and he's like, ha ha.
Kind of joking about it. Because it was this massive house. No. This text message was for a deal of a home that was huge. And I kind of sent it more to kind of tease Christie. We're like, oh, maybe this should be our next investment. But, we're talking like way, way out of our range for investment, at least what I thought.
Yeah. So I want to say this, though. When we move into a house, we basically flip it while we live in it.
Yeah, we've done that for almost all of our homes.
Yeah. So anyway, so I was like, no, Dan, we have to go look at that. You have to look at that. And he's like, So
Christie's in Maryland. I'm home in North Carolina. She's like, set up, go see that house. And I'm like, yeah, whatever. I'm like, yeah, she's in Maryland. She's dreaming. I'm not going to see this house. It's not in our price range.
Yeah. So it wasn't in our price range. So we thought.
Not as an investment property. So, it was a very expensive home by those days measures and even today's measures, but it was a distressed property. So, the property had been neglected. It was delinquent on its taxes. And so it was a wholesaler that had the house under contract. And not to get too technical, but the way it works, wholesalers will get a house, they'll negotiate a far below market valued price with a seller that is desperate in this case because his taxes were underpaid. And they will look to sell that contract for a quick buck to their network of investors. And I happen to be in this group and they sent this text message. I sent it to Christie as a gag. She's like, go see it, go see it. Well, she gets home from Maryland. I remember, after a week or so being with her family, and she's like, did you go see that house? And I'm like, no, I didn't go see that house. And if anybody knows Christie does not take no for an answer. So she proceeded to get on the phone. She gets on the phone, calls this broker, this wholesaler, and is like, when can we come see? And he's like, I'll meet you there right now.
Well, I was afraid it was going to get sold out from under us before we could even have a chance to look at it.
It was a really good deal. It was a very good price.
I just wanted to walk through and see.
So, long story short, though,
because you're speaking of opportunity, so this is why I brought this up.
Yeah. So, no, I appreciate that, but the point is, this house, not only was it a great deal, but because of the nature of the sale, it's not like a regular house. You go hire a realtor, and you go to a bank, and the bank funds it. This house, because of it was a wholesale deal. It's not a publicly listed house. It was going to require a substantial pile of cash to be able to buy it. It's not something that you can go get a standard FHA loan with very little down payment.
And they wanted it to wasn't it like a quick sale? They kind of wanted a quick sale, right?
It had to be, you had to close in that case. It was like it was in a month. You had to be able to close in this deal. It was during the holidays.
Yeah, I
So
remember.
I think we went to go see it probably like early
It
November.
was November the 6th that we
So you're
went to
talking,
see it, and we closed on December the 19th.
yeah.
That's
So
my mom's
the
birthday.
message is, the reason why we're bringing this up is not to brag about us buying a big, beautiful home. It's, if we didn't continue making sacrifices over the years of our marriage to save money, for something that we don't even know was coming, we wouldn't have we wouldn't have been able to have this money to make this amazing opportunity. And I don't want to get too personal. Maybe we'll in the future if somebody's interested. But this house essentially it tripled in value
Mm.
in very, very short time,
Mm.
because it was, obviously bought very cheap, and the repairs that we were able to do, and that's another, story in of itself.
So
But
many blessings.
we were able to significantly boost our net worth, and ultimately we live in that home today. But what I want to share for everybody is, it's because we lived sacrificially
Mm.
and did not keep up with what the world says you have to live like, given your income.
Mm.
And so, the message for everybody that I want to share today is, think about making sacrifices today to enable your future self, whether that's getting out of debt or whether positioning yourself for something big that's going to come. Opportunities come all the time.
Mm.
I think most of the time we don't see them as coming. We look at opportunities around the world and we're like, well, they're not coming my way.
Mm.
And we blame the world. We blame our job or everything else, when in fact we haven't made the sacrifices to enable that opportunity to be at our doorstep.
Mm. We don't see it.
Well, it's not that we see it. I mean, look, right now, anybody could sign up and go on LoopNet and search for businesses for sale in your area. Or you can go on Zillow and look for homes that are, way undervalued, but, available to be sold, they're for sale. And most people wouldn't even bother doing that because they're like, well, I don't have the money to do that.
Mm.
And it's true. They don't, because most people live paycheck to paycheck. And, I think that my message is, again, reminding myself, reminding all those that are close to me and those listening, that you can have those opportunities. Those opportunities can be relevant to you
Mm.
if you'll make the sacrifices. You got to make sacrifices. You have to not only get out of debt, but you have to build wealth,
Mm.
build the money reserve so that you can seize those opportunities. And that's not always buying a nice house that builds your net worth. That could be an opportunity to go overseas. It could be
Mm.
an opportunity to move to another area and start a ministry. It could be an opportunity. It's any number of things, but
Mm.
it's all contingent on us as individuals making sacrifices today to enable a better tomorrow.
Mm. So maybe at some point in the future, you can do a podcast about when people are putting their money into savings finally after they are
Mhm.
debt free. What's the best savings?
So that's the
All
kind of
that kind of
content
stuff.
I'm going
That
to
would
be
be
doing
on your
that.
money talk with
Yeah.
Dan.
Yes.
So
Yes.
I think that would be helpful too.
So
Because
subscribe to that, everybody. And again, look for that link. If not, search for it on YouTube. Again, there's not much content there, but I'm working on it. I'm not ready to make that accountability claim and commitment to my audience yet, but I will be working on shorter, very simple educational content on how to do some of this stuff in a practical way. That's the goal. But again, if reach out to me, put a comment, and let me know what you want to hear, and I'll try to do that. I'm not a guru. I don't know everything, but I know what I've learned, and I know what's enabled us to take advantage of the opportunities, both from a spiritual perspective and from a business and wealth perspective.
Mhm.
And I don't think it's that complicated. I think it's just a matter. I think it's more psychological than technical. A lot of people like to make it technical. Oh, I don't know how to do it. We just talked to some people, and in the last month, I don't know how to open an investment account. I don't know about stocks and all that. It's not about that. That's the easy part.
Mhm.
It's about, are you willing to make sacrifices today to enable a better tomorrow for
Mhm.
you, your family, and the people around you?
So maybe another topic would be go down the list. You said look at your credit card statements, that
Mm.
kind of stuff. Go down the list and see where you can cut. So that would be your first step, I guess,
Yeah. Yeah.
to look and see if you use credit cards. I don't know if definitely you've been saying to me, I've had my van for how long? Like 7 years?
Christie drives a 2017 Honda Odyssey, and it has probably 260,000. Oh no, 160,000 miles on it, or something like that.
I think it's nearing 200.
It's nearing 200,000 miles, but
I'm content. What I'm saying is Dan's like, we probably need to be thinking of your next vehicle, and I'm like, I don't want another vehicle as long as this works for me. Like, so that's the mindset though that I think we have to have. Not what's the better, what's the better, what's the better. Let's be content.
Yes,
and that's scriptural as well. In whatever state we're in, therewith to be content.
Right.
Paul said that. I think a lot of it is, not keeping up with the Joneses, but the delayed gratification thing is a really big thing, and not just for some adults, but as parents, we're trying to teach our kids this,
That's huge. It's got to start early. I think that's so wise. And I struggle because, I, by all measures, I grew up in abject poverty, and, it's so easy to just want to give your kids everything. You love your kids, you want to give them everything, but I know, that's not how you set them up for success.
I remember going to a grocery store, not a grocery store. I think it was Target actually, with our son. And I think he was maybe 4, 5. He was talking, clearly to me. There were people walking down the aisle next to me, like in the same aisle. And he was going, "Oh, mommy, this is not in my budget." He's looking at the numbers. I'm like, "You have $20, buddy. That's it." And he's like looking at, "Oh, is this $20? Is this?" I'm like, "Buddy, with tax, that's over $20.
He hates taxes.
And don't we all? Smart boy.
Yeah.
But I think it's so cool that that's something that we've, built into our kids. What's your budget?
Yeah.
And they know what their budget is. And our daughter will say, she'll add extra for taxes because she doesn't want to go over budget. It's such a big deal for her. She doesn't want to go over budget. And I'm like, that is good. Like, and she's almost always under budget. But setting that stuff for your kids when they're young, it's a mindset.
Yeah.
It's just a mindset that you either grow up with or you don't. My mom used to say, "I think you think money grows on trees." And I feel, Dan, like you just said that to me last week, to be honest.
Tongue in cheek.
But anyways, teaching our children these things is so important, and then living by them. They say too that how's it say? There's a saying that goes, you catch more, caught more than taught.
You catch more than you're taught. Yeah.
I think it rhymes though. It's a caught. Something is caught. Something is caught more than taught.
The point is you learn more from observing than you do from people talking about it.
Yeah. So modeling that really will impact future generations is my whole point in saying that.
And so if you're not going to do the things that we're talking about for yourself, if you're, content living paycheck to paycheck and, living the way you do it for your kids. Make the sacrifices today. If you'll never, maybe you're 58 years old, you can still do it to, make a better future for your kids. Or if your kids are grown, there's people around you. I'm just telling you, I really feel strongly that there are opportunities that will come your way. And those opportunities, I don't think I'm being dramatic to say, they could be world changing. If you're positioned to seize those opportunities. You can't seize them if you're not making sacrifices today so that you have a better tomorrow.
I feel like I watched a video earlier today, and it was, what would God want done?
Mm-hmm.
And so we have to open ourselves to dream bigger, because it is not just what we are doing. It's what God can do through us.
Right.
For us, for others.
For the world, through you.
It's true.
It is.
Like, think of this church in, where, Serbia?
Mm-hmm.
Okay. So you and your dad just were able to go there. You guys were able to rebuild a church in Serbia.
So it's the church that my grandfather was one of the first apostolic Pentecostals saved in Eastern Europe, and at the time there was the nation of Yugoslavia, and he was baptized and filled with the Spirit, and then ultimately felt called to go back to his home village in what's today Serbia, in a small area, regional, kind of central Serbia there, to start a church. And obviously, when he passed away, the church kind of became neglected, and it lost its parishioners and leadership, and so it became in a state of disrepair. And so the nation was celebrating their 100-year anniversary of the apostolic message being preached there. And so one of the things that they thought of was we should rebuild this church and remodel it. So my dad, who happens to live this lifestyle as well, and I'm very close to my dad, and we do a lot of business together, but we both kind of felt compelled to say, we're going to fund in large part, and most of the part, they're talking about trying to get a lot of people together, and we're like, no, we're just going to do this ourselves. And so my family basically funded the remodeling of this church. It's a good example. We would have never been able to do that if we were not people who lived this concept and this principle. And so closing thoughts, I know a little different today. It's money sometimes makes people uncomfortable, but it doesn't have to be. It's you can even erase money. We could have just as easily spoke for the last hour and 1 minute about personal health and how making sacrifices for your personal health enables a better tomorrow, right? The principle applies to almost every area of life. We just happen to pick money because it's something that almost everybody can relate to.
I just want to say that, and I bring that up about the church in Serbia because your giving, your ability to give is truly impacting lives.
100%.
And you don't know who those people will reach that you would never have met. When I say reach, just with love, who knows the extent of the difference that we made in those people's lives.
Yeah.
And so I'm kind of thinking through this. Can it really change the world? Like, I'm listening to your words and I'm just like, I think it's true. I think it's really true. And I think, not to be dramatic, but it's kind of scary to think of, if we don't do these things, then what does God want done? He can do anything, right? But he does use us as vessels. So what does God want done? It's a question we have to ask ourselves and surrender to completely based on what we feel, that the Lord is leading us to do. But giving, if you don't have it if you're not saving, if you're in debt, you don't have the ability to give.
You're a slave. You can't, you're shackled, and you cannot answer the call that's before you.
And how rewarding is it for us to say we made a difference in Serbia? And then it just makes us also feel so good, right? It's just this win all the way around.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
Wow. We said we're going to talk for 45 minutes.
Well, it's good stuff. And I appreciate everybody for listening. Hopefully this hits home for somebody. Hopefully this was for somebody. I'll just, close out with stuff you probably hear all the time, but please do engage. Let us know if this is impactful. Reach out to us, comment, and let us know. And we got a lot more we want to talk about. A lot of other people that will be joining us. We've gotten a couple messages, a couple people that will participate in this podcast. But thanks again, everybody, for listening. We love you all. And Christie, closing words.
So I feel like, not to be super spiritual, but would you like just to say a prayer?
Let's do it.
Over, people who just feel maybe they're in just a state of, a mindset of despair or this inability, these, incapable of this or that. And just that the Lord would just help to transform ways of thinking that are so limited, because God is he's not limiting us.
No.
He wants this abundant life for us. And so would you pray over mindsets and just for freedom of thought to just believe in greater and better things?
Absolutely.
Okay.
So God, first of all, we're thankful that you have brought us, that Um, we've been through so much, and reflecting, through our story, I know and I can see your fingerprint through our lives. And I'm really grateful that you have been there for us. And the principles of your word absolutely were central to us making the changes. But more than that, the leading of your Holy Spirit really guided us through this journey that we just talked about for the past hour. So, God, I'm praying for everybody that's listening, anybody that's watching. God, I pray that those same impactful features of your word and of your Holy Spirit would impact everybody as well. God, I really feel like your church is able to turn this world upside down in 2025. And for everybody listening, I'm praying that they would feel that same unction, that same conviction, not condemnation, but conviction to respond to this message today and to this podcast and the principles we talked about. Because anybody and everybody has exactly what they need to be a world changer. And I know money is one small part of it, but it's a huge part of our culture and our society and how the world works. And so help every person to step into their full potential by obeying the principles of stewardship in your word. And God, I pray that you would accelerate the effect of what everybody does, whatever anybody does to make one step toward these principles. God, multiply it in your kingdom. And we thank you for it. In Jesus' name we pray. Amen.
Amen.
Amen. Thank you, everybody.